Hello and good afternoon. Welcome to this podcast on the digitalization of Africa and the risks and opportunities this holds. My name is Nico Heller, and this is Reboot 2030, a Democracy School podcast. My guest today is Jean-Désiré Kouassi. Jean-Désiré is based in Abidjan on the Ivory Coast and is a visionary communications manager specializing in youth engagement, advocacy, and digital communications. He's the founder of Be Digitwise, a social organization that has trained over 1,500 young leaders in digital skills to date. He holds a bachelor's degree in linguistics and English literature, along with certifications in public policy and social media marketing. He's been honored with the Most Supportive Participant Award from the Young African Leadership Initiative and recognized as Best Social Media Manager by Iowa University and Colleges, Media and Newspapers. I can see that Jean-Désiré has arrived, so do let me invite him in. Hey, Jean-Désiré, how are you? Good to see you.
Hey, Nico, I'm doing good. And you, good to see you too.
It all worked out brilliantly. Thank you very much for joining me on this Reboot dialogue today on the digitalization of Africa. This is a real honor to have you here. You're one of the kind of the foremost sort of activists in this field in West Africa. So let's have already introduced you briefly. So let's dig straight in because we've got a lot of stuff we want to get through. So they said digitalization is a key driver of both economic and social development, not only in the industrialized world, but increasingly also in developing countries. Now, we often forget this because, especially in Europe, when we think digitalization and we struggle with it, it's a big challenge for Europe and North America too. Many businesses lag behind, government is very, very slow in adapting to digitalization. So when we think about digitalization here in Europe, we don't think about Africa, we think about ourselves. And we think, oh God, that is such a huge challenge. So I'm so glad to have you here to do it today. Now, you run an organization called Be Digitwise, and you're doing pioneering work in this area. What kinds of infrastructure and affordability challenges, anything from barriers to entry or participation, do you encounter in that work? And what, if anything, is being done about them to ensure equitable access to the platform, especially for people in faraway and hard to reach regions?
Yeah, so thank you so much, Nico, and greetings to everyone following us today. It's going to be really nice and engaging conversations. The number one thing that most people are facing, mainly in Africa and West Africa to be precise, is people are living far away from town, from big cities. So infrastructure is one of the key points where we talk about covering. You have internet, satellite, and stuff like that. But when you get to rural places, you go to villages, you get to places that are very far from big cities. It's quite difficult for those young people and for those people living in those regions to get access to internet. It's not just having a phone. Having a phone, a SIM card helps you to make calls. But beyond that, having access to internet that is stable, having access to internet that is fast is very, very difficult for those people and for people living in rural places. So there is this gap to bridge. The second thing that is very, very important is the cost. So affordability is not for everyone. Understanding that, for example, in Ivory Coast, the medium payment is 75,000 francs CFA. So if I have to convert it in dollars, is about $100 and $110 per month for someone. So imagine from this $100 or $110, you have to take up to 5,000. So francs CFA, that would be like $10 or $20 a month to buy data. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be very challenging. So infrastructure is a big challenge, but also affordability. I think the government here in Ivory Coast that is trying to lower and to make it accessible, but there's still a lot to do.
There's no sound at the moment.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
So sorry, there was this internet issue in the building, but I'm back. Sorry.
No worries at all. It happens. So sorry, maybe you start again. You were talking about the challenges of infrastructure, specifically, obviously, accessibility, availability, and then also, of course, cost. Maybe you can, you were sort of saying that in rural areas, particularly, it's very, very difficult. It's much better, I believe, in urban areas.
Yes, yes. So in urban areas is so stability is okay, and people working can definitely afford it, but there is still gap, because even though in the urban areas you have the speed also challenge. So you have access to it, but it's not that fast everywhere you find yourself. So there is also these challenges, but I believe, and I think that if we understand that is something important to all of us, that internet is not just something that we can work on it later. To me, internet is like education. Internet is like health, because now it's part of our everyday life. We are always connected to internet. We do everything with internet. You go to the bank, you need internet. You want to book, for example, a place, you need internet. You want to see a doctor, you need internet. So internet has become like water in our everyday lives. So we need actually to work on it and face those challenges. And I think that the government is actually trying to manage those aspects. They are trying to work with these private companies so that they can reduce the cost and also make it more affordable and more faster. Funny enough, it was in April, I think, recently, where a shutdown here in Cote d'Ivoire regarding internet. One of the cables were cut, and there was no internet for like almost 24 hours, and still having trouble still today regarding that. So we understand that everything was stopped because there was no internet. I was working, I couldn't work. Why? Because there was no internet. So internet is something that we should actually work on it, not only trying to make it available, but also make it affordable and then accessible to everyone.
Now, obviously, in terms of connectivity, there's obviously kind of broadband, and there's internet, and there's the rich media, and then there's of course the social media that also run on the kind of on the internet. But there's also sort of low capacity forms of communication using mobile phones, using texting, and others. So I imagine that presumably. In a place like Ivory Coast, it would be a mix, wouldn't it? People, they would use their mobile phones not just for the internet, but they would use it also for SMS, for text messages, and so on and so forth. Do you see a kind of a merging of the two, a combination of the two in the medium term, or do you think it's going to be a question of getting as quickly as possible onto a kind of a broadband kind of internet solution?
I think it's going to be like emerging one and a quick one. In the people habits right now, they are people are not using a lot SMS, so it's getting like old now. People are using WhatsApp, they are using messengers, they are doing this social media app for communications. Even like in my family, for example, we don't use that much SMS. We use the phone call, like the normal phone call, but for chatting we go on either WhatsApp or in like any other social media. So we understand that internet is now crossing everything, and it's not shifting and changing our habits. So I think it's not actually going to be, it's actually getting into place, and it has now become something very, very important in the day-to-day activities of people. So there is a need for people to catch up the trend, except like some people will be left behind, definitely.
When the internet first came in Europe, in the UK and in Germany and places that I've lived, we started off not having it in the house, in the beginning. So what we used to do, we would go to internet cafes. There were actually, and that was a real thing back in the 1990s. Because people, they didn't have internet connections at home, so they would go to internet cafes, to hubs, and use the internet there. Is that something that is happening in Africa as well, or do people have it in the home?
So we have both, but now I would say like up to 70 or 75% of people have internet in their phones. So they don't go to the cafe. But in the early days, so in the 20s, when it started, we used to go to cafe. I used to go to cafe. I used to go to some places that were very dedicated. For example, university. In 2010 till 2016, I used to go to the university and then get to some place and get internet. But nowadays, since the internet is something that is getting, that popularity, people are now having their phones and or either buying Wi-Fi and put it in their homes, so people don't get really outside to get browsing or get into internet.
I mean, when people think about sort of international aid, development aid, economic development support, they tend to, when it comes to Africa, certainly I wouldn't initially think of sort of digital media. I would think of agriculture. I would think of, basic infrastructure needs. I might think of housing, schools, you name it. There's all these other things that need building up. Where in the list of priorities do you think sort of digital development kind of comes in at the moment in Africa? And what is your kind of take on this? Is this the right place, or should this be prioritized in some ways?
So I think that actually internet is in all the sectors that people that you just mentioned, and that this international aid try to implement in different countries. If you take the case of agriculture, today with the climate change, it's quite difficult to anticipate on how, today is going to be sunny, or it's going to be windy, or it's going to be rainy. It's quite difficult to predict. That was not the case years ago. We knew that, for example, at this period from so months and so months, it's going to be rainy season, from so month to so month, it's going to be windy season, it's going to be cold. But today, with climate change, it's difficult. Thanks to internet, thanks to digital media, to digital platforms, we can try to anticipate. So internet is actually part of all the stages, is part of all the sectors. So to me, internet is not just one of the priorities, it's actually the priority as you're trying to educate people. When COVID-19 struck, we all shifted to digital platforms. I was at that time in the United States, I was doing my certificate, and we shifted from going into in-person classrooms to online classrooms. This was not planned, but we have to adjust and go quickly into it. Countries like in Africa, some countries couldn't get back to school, so they stopped it. They were blocked. So if we are trying to support countries, we are trying to give them, programs to be implemented, we should also have a scope where internet, digital platforms are also part of the strategy. It's not something, it's like an extra fee. It's actually one of the fees, actually, because we use it every day. For example, if I wanted to talk to you, Nico, we did it through email. But if there was no internet, you have to do it through to the post, send me a postcard, write it back, and send it to you. It's going to take ages. But communication is moving faster. So is any other sector like agriculture, education, health, climate change, and all that. All those data we are needing or we are using right now, we can make it useful and make it accessible thanks to internet. So if countries don't have the right infrastructure, helping them to navigate and to browse and to share the right information with that internet is going to be difficult to achieve. That's why most of the programs today, they can't reach the right people, the right audience. Because if you limit yourself to what you get from newspapers, and you don't think about people living in the countryside or in rural places, your project will be limited to urban cities. And that's where all the drama happens.
Now, is there any kind of like sort of a startup culture as well? In other words, are there sort of indigenous internet businesses that kind of think about, kind of like unique new ways of using the internet to meet local needs? Are there any examples in Ivory Coast of people using the internet as a tool for business, or indeed as a sort of as part of their business model?
Yeah, so Ivory Coast is currently, facing a rise of new startups that are really focusing on using everything digital. So everything is moving to digital. I don't want to advertise in the company, but there are some companies who are doing in the banking area. Some are doing in the health area, for example. And there is this lady that has developed a platform that's called Muso. And this platform helps you to have like a bracelet on your hands. And this bracelet gets all your information. She has like a QR code. When it is scanned, they get all your information. So they got your blood type, everything about you. If you have a crisis, you just have to scan the bracelet. And with this bracelet, they can give you more information to the doctor. So it's something that is rising right now. And if you go online to some platform to get the data from the country, you will see that people are getting more and more connected to internet, and businesses are taking advantage of it. Today, there is the rise of e-businesses in Cote d'Ivoire. People prefer to do business online than having like a physical shop. Even though they have like a physical shop, they would prefer to go online on social media, advertise there to get customers. So it's something that is getting very like a lifestyle day to day. Today, for example, if you are not on internet, they say you are an old guy. you're not trending. You are no more trending. So internet is now like one of the criteria where they know if you're trending or you're not trending.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, let's return once more to this question of accessibility and the digital divide, because clearly, I mean, indeed, this is not like just an African problem, to be clear. Mm-hmm. I mean, we have a digital divide in Germany, and Germany is a very wealthy country. So digitalization, and the challenges that digitalization creates, they are different from country to country and different depending on the kind of, where you are in your kind of economic development, but nonetheless, those challenges are there everywhere. So, and of course, governments and, and voluntary sector organizations, start initiatives trying to somehow bridge that divide, make it easier for disadvantaged people, for minorities, for people that are, like live in a rural countryside to access the internet. So, are there any such initiatives in Ivory Coast or in West Africa more widely that you're aware of, where, say, international development organizations or governments or NGOs are supporting digital development to make it more accessible, to make the internet more accessible to rural communities?
Yeah, so there are some organizations. So you have, for example, the European Union as well that is working toward that. You have the United Nations through the program USAID, and their embassies here in Cote d'Ivoire who are trying, actually to provide some spaces, and that they call American spaces, for example, where people can go and learn English as well, but also get access to internet. So there is those initiatives as well. And in my position, for example, with Digitalisation, where we're trying to, even though we don't give them places for now, this is part of our future actions, but we provide them with the training they need to understand that internet is not just for entertainment. Because most of the challenges, apart from not having access to internet, is the use of internet as well. Because most of the people are used to get to internet just for entertainment, to get some funny videos, while they can use that to train themselves, to get skills, to improve their capacities. So as you are working on thanks to those initiatives, youth head education program, young people having those in and out activities and programs, there is also this training aspect that is quite vital and help the community to understand that internet is a powerful tool they can use to leverage their activity in the businesses. If you go into some regions like Nigeria or Ghana or Kenya or South Africa, you will see initiatives that are actually working in either setting up some little places, some hubs, where young people living in rural places can come to and get free access to internet for free. So they come, and most of the universities in African countries trying to partner with local businesses or telecommunication companies where they provide free internet in universities. At times, it's not stable. We understand that, but at least they're trying, to bridge the gap between not having and having a little, and then after a while, maybe getting more. But I think there is a need, as you mentioned earlier in the conversations, as we are working on providing help and support to country and government, we should also think about those aspects in the program that we have, that those international organizations are bringing into the country. It's not just solving education issues, not just solving health issues, but it's also internet, because the one who doesn't have access to information is the one that is illiterate. And today, everybody can be educated, can get education if they have access to internet. It's just part of your willingness to be educated. But before getting the willingness, there is a need to have access to internet, and that's something that we have to work on it.
Of course, I mean, much of the internet or certain aspects of the internet are still very much linked to reading and writing. It's a lot of it is still text-based, not everything. I mean, we're talking on video, and indeed, like video and audio podcasting and so on and so forth is actually making up a huge part, if not most of the internet. But still, if you can't read and write, it's still very difficult to navigate it, because you still have these bits where you have to find your way through text. So there is a kind of an educational challenge that goes alongside with a technology kind of challenge. When you train people, when you kind of run sort of like courses on digital skills, how do you what is your curriculum? I mean, what are you focusing on? How do what's the emphasis on? Is it on the technical aspect, on HTML and how the actual internet works technologically, or is it on how you use it effectively, like say social media or podcasting, or is it on far more basic skills in terms of how to actually access it in the first place and what to look out for and so forth and so forth? How do you prioritize? What's the focus in your training?
So I would say that the training is focusing on 4 pillars mainly. So you have the number 1 pillar where we train people, young people that can learn and that can read and write actually. We train them on the basics. So this is internet. This is the history of internet. This is why it started. And this is where it's going actually with AI and stuff like that. This is how an internet works. So you have the box, you have this level, you have this level and level. So they understand the basic of what internet is. Secondly, we move them to the values. The values, understanding that internet may have those consequences. So we may have those apprehensions, but internet is the place for liberty, is a place for learning, is a place for growth. So we teach them these values so that when you are now moving from the basics, you get to the value, and now you are moving to the theory where we teach you, for example, how to use safely internet. Where are the platforms to go to proof track what you are reading? Where are the places to get in touch with social people? How to network with people? So they have pillar number 1, that are the basics. Pillar number 2, the values. Pillar number 3, the theory, and then pillar number 4, which is where we talk about the technical skills. So where you will learn HTML, you will learn design, you will learn all the software tools in collaboration with other organizations. But before I get to pillar 4, let me get back to pillar 3. Pillar 3 is where also we teach them about policies. We think about the law on internet, because internet also is a place, is now turned like a government. So there are some laws to follow. There are some ways to behave. So we teach them also how they can use this thing to leverage their engagement, maybe at the democratic level, maybe at the community level, maybe at the political level. But we train them on this point that they understand that internet is a treasure, is a mining treasure where they can learn and then move. The technical skills can be, learned, I would say easily, but let's say quickly, because there are some tools that help you to do the tasks in advance, so you can anticipate in learning. But those 3 first pillars that are, the basic, the values, and then the theory, they are something that you have to be taught by somebody else. The technical skills, you can learn it like self-learning. But for the 3 ones, you need someone that has a good mindset and that wants you to be, an important person in your business. So we work on these 4 pillars so that they can have the 360 apprehension and comprehension about internet.
That's really interesting. I mean, you mentioned AI, artificial intelligence here as well. I mean, it's interesting that you mentioned it. Of course, this is a very new thing for everybody in Europe as well. And I myself have only started really actively using AI in the last couple of months, but I've become quite fond of it. It really does make me hugely more productive. It's a very effective way of helping me to think basically. But of course, one thing about AI is that it's trained on data that very much reflects European and North American values. And with that
Yeah.
come racism, come sort of colonial attitudes and all the rest. So AI in a way is a kind of, it's a two-edged sword, isn't it? It's a kind of a thing. And of course, I look forward to the day that there's going to be an African AI, that
Yeah.
reflects and mirrors African values. Because until that day, you're going to, AI is going to feel quite strange, I think, if you're not. Even for Europeans, some of it feels quite strange. When they first started to release the first ChatGPT kind of versions, and indeed there's a kind of a more basic sort of catch-up version coming out in Germany, a European kind of, if you like, response or answer to the American models. And in their early phases, they tend to be incredibly, almost fascist. They tend to be really nasty because that's
Yeah.
of course what you pick up on the internet, and until they're being trained and so on and so forth, and also sort of somehow contained with sort of guardrails and so on and so forth. They're quite problematic models, but yes, of course there's a big future in this, and of course it's probably going to make a big difference. Where do have you started using AI yourself? Did you see people in Africa use it, and what's the take up here? What's the sort of the general feel?
So I personally started using AI. I would say end of 2022 till today, and it's a big boom in Africa. Is a big boom. I will say if you go on TikTok, you will see, or YouTube, you see thousands of young people, African people, trying to explain how to use, for example, ChatGPT, how to use and Gemini from Google. So is getting to the day-to-day habits of the population. But as you said, and I think this question will be solved if one day Africans create their own internet and their own social media, because that's where the root is. The root is not just at the level of the AI. We understand that AI is great, and AI has always been in our day-to-day activities. It's now today that is quite a separate department, standing alone on its own track and moving forward. But AI has always been in our daily activities. So I believe, like you, that one day we get an AI that will have this African perspective, African approach. But I won't be also that, standing steadfast on this aspect as well, because we need broad perspective to understand the world. If we go into this perspective of global village, we need different perspective, we need different approaches. For now, we accept that we have this European US approach, but I believe is the way for others to pave in and to move forward and to see how we can leverage this aspect, leverage this way of developing tools. And AI is a great tool to me. I think it's part of our daily activities. We need that for brainstorming, for correcting our slight mistake, our approaches, and we definitely need that. But in a way, for now, we have to learn. For those who know how to do it, I have a friend of mine who also we work in an AI that is like Siri, but that uses local languages here in Cote d'Ivoire. So it's now in Rwanda, fostering is education, but he developed that. We also have a guy here in Africa that also created a phone that is using the local languages in the phone. So you have French, you have English, but you also have the local languages in Cote d'Ivoire that are implemented to use the phone. So I think there is a way, there is a big wave to jump in, and AI is not just limited to Europe and US. There are African will definitely come up with brilliant ideas that I believe that maybe exist that I'm not aware of, but definitely AI is a big advantage for everyone that wants to tap in.
Absolutely. I mean, it's going to be, well, nobody knows how AI is going to develop. We don't know how it's going to change the world, but there's a sort of a strong sense that it'll fundamentally change the way we work, the way we learn, the way we entertain ourselves, and so on and so forth. So it's going to have a major impact, and of course, it's going to change the internet as well in so many different ways, isn't it? I mean, they are now sort of saying that AI has the capacity and there is a number of people expecting this to happen, to break the internet. By that I mean the internet is built on a business model that basically says you can use my tools for free, but in exchange I get your data. Yeah. Now this so this is what Facebook does. I can use Facebook for free, but Facebook then uses the user data to basically serve up advertising that makes me buy products. So it's very much focused on that particular marketing and business model. Now, once you have fake news and sort of like interfering with those algorithms, once you have, fake news at scale, we're not talking just a couple of here and a couple of there, we're talking at scale, then these algorithms actually break down. They can actually no longer process in a meaningful way the data that is thrown at them. So they, you see this already when you look at Google now. A Google search has become far less meaningful and productive as it still was like a year or two ago. And of course, the likes of Google have a real problem because they're both major producers and promoters of AI, like Gemini and all the rest in the case of Google, but they are also really affected. Their business model is being undermined by the very same AI. So they're in a very, very difficult place conceptually and strategically, and it's interesting. So I mean, we just don't know. And but what I find interesting is that it really for the first time brings it home how to the extent to which the internet reflects kind of cultural biases, political biases, and all the rest. And from our conversation, what I find really quite interesting is what I sort of sense is an ambition for there to emerge, if you like, an African internet. And I think that is a really interesting thought. And I don't know, do you have thoughts on that, like a vision for an African internet and how an organization like Digitwise can help, like young people to get there?
Yeah, so this is our vision, globally speaking. Having an African internet going to play a key role in showing the side of the coin of Africa that we don't know. Recently, I was addressing on policy making, and I was saying that most of the time, people come to listen but not to empower. They come to create an environment but not a safe place. And that's where African internet will get in and will be needed, because African internet will be a place where not only young people, even though I'm stressing young people because we have the cornerstone of everything, but where young people and everyone that want to get access to internet, we see that Africa has a potential. We understand with all the statistics that Africa is the place in the nearest future where everyone will be coming in, and everybody's coming right now into Africa to invest, to be developed, to get all those big boom. But there is this part of Africa that people don't know. And this part of Africa is where you see brilliant people making impact, developing communities. To me, achievement is achievement. Even though it's at a small level, it's at a local level, it's at a national level, it's at an international level. Achievement is achievement. And we need to celebrate that. But we can't celebrate because we don't have the tool to put it forward. This, as you said, the internet is nasty now, is more focusing on Europe and US and Asia, advertisement. But this African aspect, you can see young people today in Cote d'Ivoire building on little bridge in the neighborhood to make easier for one people to get to the other side of the street. This is an achievement. For example, it was in 2018, 2019, I and my friend in my former town where I live, we used to do like this annual activity where we go in the street and we clean the street and we advertise it online. We talk about it online. This is small. It's at a small scale, but it's actually doing something. And that's where African internet will be needed to push forward these small activities. Achievement is achievement. Second point is that the African internet, to me, will help in creating a safe space where people can express their ideas without being a threat to others or without being threatened to go to prison. Because today, if you come to internet and you have an idea, you have something to say, you have to check the four walls and make sure that you are not finding yourself in an isolated places and be rejected. So African Internet, we help to work on that, where nobody's in bias, nobody's rejected, nobody is difficult to get to this level, but we can still achieve that. To me, equality is not having the same level. Equality is allowing everybody to do in their own capacities what they can do. And that's where African Internet will be needed in helping young people, local, international, global people known or not known, to do their work and help this to be known by the others. Because most of the people, they see Africa in two ways. Africa as a place of war, so there is this crisis aspect, and Africa of the place of booming, where you can invest and be developed. Africa is not just, or Africa, there is a third point that maybe people know or don't know, but Africa, the place of enjoyment, so entertainment, fun. But there is the place of Africa creativity. There is a place of Africa good political leaders. There is a place of Africa good thinking people. And I thank you, Nico, for this opportunity where you bring people coming and share ideas that are not in the box, but out of the box, that are brilliant, and they can display, their thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I sort of see two aspects here, which I would like to kind of come back to in our discussion here. The first one has to do with sort of like local identity and local opportunities that it creates, but not just local as in my local street, but local also in terms of national. Given that the internet is a global thing, so local for me kind of extends out quite a bit. But there is this hyper-local level, like the example you gave, an initiative to clean your local street. Of course, you can use the internet like a bulletin board to share that idea with others and to encourage others to join you. But of course, you can do a similar thing at the national level as well. You can also use it as a bulletin board, and you can do and you can aggregate it up. So there's aspects around that which have to do with as you said, sort of being kind of skilled at what, how to behave, not to endanger yourself or others. I mean, at a very basic level, I mean, even, Europe has this reputation of being very free and very liberal. And yes, to some extent that is true. But even in Europe, there are clear taboos, things that you would not or should not, say or do online. And very basic examples, if you upload naked pictures of yourself, then you shouldn't blame others if somebody discovers that and shares it. Yeah, so don't do it.
Exactly.
That. If you don't do it, then there's no risk. I mean, we always say only put on the internet what you would put on a postcard. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, it's not a secret letter. It's a postcard for everybody there to read. But of course, for that, you have to really kind of begin to think about what am I allowed, what can I say without endangering myself, my friends, my family, or whatever. So that I think that's one aspect. And I wonder whether your kind of Be Digit-wise education kind of talks about this as well, to prepare people, for that, because it's not a free-for-all. People are listening in, and there can be sort of like pushback. So let's start there. I mean, to what I remember, it's like, I mean, and there's another aspect to this. I mean, my parents' generation, they obviously they were quite old when the internet came in. So they are used to, in a way, trusting or believing anything that's written in print. They're not stupid. They're highly educated people, but there still is a tendency to believe something that is written down in a weird way. And of course, online, in the internet, that is not a good way to be. You mustn't trust anything. You always need to look for some confirmation from other sources before you can trust it. But are these kinds of aspects, protecting yourself and also making sure that the information you look at is true, is that part of what you're doing?
Yeah. So at Be Digit-wise, we used to say that never put something online that you can't defend, that you can't accept, and you can be proud of it. Even though it's a like, it's a comment, or it's a share. If you like something online, that means that you are okay with that thing. That means that you can defend it. You defend this idea. It's not just going and popping like and say, okay, yes, I just like it. No, because even though in the print world, if you buy a newspaper to read in a way, that means that you follow the ideology of the newspaper, or you want to check something there in the newspaper. And so, but now today on internet, what is great is that you can see something and don't touch it. You just get into your feed and then you can scroll it and go to the next one. But at the time you put a simple like, you are engaged. That's what they call about engagement. When they talk about the criteria or the measurement on social media, they say engagement. Engagement includes like, comment, and share. So at Digitalised, we train people on, so we are not done with the toolkit, we are working on it, but we are during our training session where we train them on how to, to be online and to be alerted and to understand that internet is a safe place, but in inverted commas. Because everything you post online, even though you deleted it, is in the hand of somebody else. Even though you hire the best hackers and they go and they delete it, there is no insurance that this same hacker has not saved it somewhere that can use it against you. So everything you post online, understand that in the 5, 10, or 20 or 100 years later, it can be used for you or against you. That's one of the rules that we train them. After that, we train them on fact checking. So they have to fact check everything. They have to do it. Even there's a small piece of information that you see online, it can be like, okay, for example, this president died 20 years ago. It can be true, but maybe there are some points in the article that are fake. So don't rush and go and share it online. Go and check and make sure that you double check everything. Third point that we also train them is that don't do things because of the group. Don't follow the crowd. It won't help you. It will crush you at the end. Do things based on your own conviction. That's why it's important to be convinced when you go online. If you're not a fan of online platform, don't go there. Nobody will force you. There are people that are succeeding today without internet. They are making money in Africa without internet. There is no need for them to go on internet. There is no need. But to our generation, baby boomers, Gen Z, is difficult. We need internet for our day-to-day activities because we want to get it faster. So things are going very, very fast. So we work on it. We train young people on this aspect because it's vital. And as we're working, when we get close to elections, people rush to get into trainings where you have to fact check. But this is not just limited to elections. It's a day-to-day activity. That's what we tell to our trainees, that fact checking, being careful online, is not just because there is election. So if a person, I might go to jail. No, but every day you have this sword on your head, and that you have to make sure that you watch on your steps because you are walking on eggs. So you have to be careful.
Absolutely. I mean, there's another aspect of the internet which I find I make extensive use of it. I mean, the Reboot dialogues would not be possible without the internet, and we run these dialogues with with you at this time, with other people in Africa, another time with people in Asia, with people in North and South America, in Australia. This is the beauty of it. We can have these dialogues, conversations, and it's relatively cheap to do that. If I would have to invite you to Berlin and pay for your plane ticket and so forth, it would be a very expensive undertaking, and we couldn't do any, as many dialogues. So this is a beauty of it. It brings us closer together, and it allows us to exchange ideas, to have dialogues across distance. But there's another aspect, the flip side to this, if you like, the other side, which means we see aspects of each other's culture, which might be super attractive or might be terribly unappealing. But we see, I mean, the internet projects an image of Europe, of Germany, or whatever, France, and so on and so forth, and of course of the US or Canada, and so on and so forth. So we have this, and all these places come closer. So you see on Facebook, you see people in London, in Paris, and whatever, New York, having a great time, and you might think, oh, Jesus, I'd like to have some of that. Or I'd like to, I'd have to have, as much fun as this, or, dance as wildly as that, or whatever it might be, whatever you find attractive about this as a young person. And of course, there are kind of dangers in this, because what you see is a very selective view of the other culture. People are quite vain. They dress up. They project a personality, like influencer type personality, which has nothing to do with real life. So we get this image of each other. Not you and me personally, but whatever. People from Ivory Coast get an image of me or of Germany or whatever, which probably has very little to do with the real me. And there's something. There's both an opportunity, if it leads to real dialogue, but there's also a real danger. And the danger goes from kind of contaminating local cultures with stuff that you really don't want. But it also has potentially a certain pull that people say, oh, I want to go there. And they just set off and they kind of end up in really dangerous and problematic situations. And it's both. So how do you engage with that? How do you train? How do you prepare people for that kind of thing?
So my work addresses one, like this thing that you just mentioned, this contrast where you feel closer to people, and at the same time you crash into the real reality where it's not everything that shines that is gold. So I used to say this quote that everything you post online should defend you even though you are not around. That's something you have to understand. If you need to defend yourself on everything you post online, that means you're faking it. There is no need. If you say something that you trust, then leave it. And then, it's going to be so trying to bring up things that reflect your identity. There's no shame about anything. You are in the process of growing up. So you are called to go through mistakes. You are called to go through some failures. I fail a lot in my career, so it's not a big deal. I learned through them. So internet is a big platform that helps you shine quickly, but it can also turn you off quickly. So you have the two sides of the sword in your hand. What I used to tell to the trainees is that internet, focus on the good aspect on internet, but don't forget the bad aspect. We can keep on saying that internet is not safe, internet is not that, knowing that there is this side of internet. If you use your wisdom, you use your intelligence, you can grow, you can be the better person you want to be, you can find your hobbies, you can find something that you like and develop. So internet will give you the reality, but will also give you the reality you want to see. So there are platforms where you can find the truth, but if you're someone that likes everything that shines and glitches, then that will give you what is glitching, and then you have to accept and live with that. Meanwhile, there is something that you see online, you can fact check it in person with somebody. There is people everywhere in the globe that can help you with that. You can get in touch with anybody and get this information. So internet is a safe place for whosoever wants to be in a safe place. But if you're trying to larger your space and go further into it, be careful and watch your step, because you might find something that can crash your perceptions, and that's tricky.
So that's interesting. So this notion of like, well, be yourself, be authentic, trust yourself as well, rather than projecting a kind of a persona or a kind of a character which is put on, which isn't really you, and which you might regret, at some point, and because it wasn't you. I mean, it's one thing to be criticized for something that you really kind of believe is part of you. You can stand up for that, or to be criticized for something that you actually realize is shameful and you shouldn't have done that in the first place. So there's that. And it's interesting. I mean, like in any city, in any environment, if you go out, walk out your front door, and if you look for bad people, you will find them. If you walk out the front door and you look for crime, you will find it. If you look for trouble, you will find it. And it's no different online, isn't it? So, and just as we learn to be selective about where we go, how we engage with the real world, and how we navigate risk and danger in the real world, we have to learn to do that also online. It's a very, very interesting thing. And of course, I totally agree that these aspects are best learned like in a kind of in a group situation, because you need to discuss this, don't you? It's not just something that you can read and then do, but you have to talk to others who, you know, in your age group, your peers, and you have to, it's a kind of a coming of age, isn't it?
Exactly. I agree. Group discussion is one of the key activities that we run, where people can express their ideas. I think, to me, there is no bad ideas. We just have ideas that maybe are not matching the right time or the right place or need improvement. But there are no bad ideas. You know, people give their information, they are sharing their expression based on their background, based on where they come from. So based on what they lived before, that's why they are thinking like this today. So they need to meet a certain level of habits so they can grow the way of thinking. There is this picture that I read somewhere where a doctor tried with a rat in a bowl of water. So what he did is, like, he took the rat, put him in the bowl of water, let him sink, and as about to get to the down of the bottom, take him out, make him rest for 5-10 minutes, bring it back, do the same experiment. And at the end of the day, the rat was able to survive 14 to 20 minutes longer in the water before sinking. So as people are growing in the knowledge, as they are growing discussions, they have their capacity to develop their own defense. But you can't take someone that just stepped into internet yesterday and let him, go and crash himself. It's like a baby that was born like an hour ago, and then you give him the car key to go and drive your car. Even though he lacks the key, he can put it in the hole and then drive the car. So that's, to me, how internet is. There is this need of helping people going through the stages of their learning. However, we should not forget that there is the need for continuous support, because without support, there is no community. However, internet is a place of community. So we need this approach of a group, but also have this mindset that each person is specific. To me, each person is a piece of a puzzle where everyone is important, but without the others, you can't do the work.
So in terms of the people that would, come to be Digitalised to take part in a course on a program, what's the sort of the typical profile for a person who would sort of join one of your courses? How old would they be, and what would their kind of background be? Would they still be in school? Would there be students? Would they be in their late teens, in their 20s, in their 30s? What's your typical student for Be Digitalised?
So we started with people between 18 to 35, but now I'm working on a program where I want to go and tackle younger ones. So people that maybe in primary school, because this is now, thanks to TV and iPad and all that, younger people have access to internet. So going to those people. So to me, Be Digitalised is open to everybody, all ages. I trained my mom how to use her phone before I have to go to the US, so she knows how to use WhatsApp and all that. So it's for all the ages, but the main point that I stress on is your willingness to learn. Be able to let yourself be taught and also contribute to the training. It's not just, okay, I came to the training, they are just doing, I just copy and paste and go. No, the training, you have a place into it where you are part of it, because something that is done for you without you will not benefit you.
Does sort of internet education or digital media education play any role, say, in school education, or at are there schools, or are there kind of like opportunities for school children to learn this at school, or is it something they would do outside of school?
So I do both. I either go to school and train them during their program, or 2021 and 2022 was a teacher in a college where I train young people on that. I train them on technical skills, but also on how to use internet. I even support them during their defense of their memoir. But we also have training outside of the school. That's where we have this, open conversations and these free discussions about internet and how we can work on some policies that can influence. So we have those both. You have in school, program and also out of the school program.
And of course, when you kind of carry on that curve, at some point, you will be internet literate, and you'll be in some kind of professional capacity doing some job or whatever, and you may want to use, say, social media to market or to promote, your products or your services or whatever. Do you offer courses on social media marketing as well, or how far do you take that, or doesn't?
So we take them from all the stages. Our goal is that they can be independent in the activities. We want them to be replicators of what we are doing. So we train them on businesses. We train them on opportunities. Recently, I launched a program that's called Be the One, where I train people on how to be the one selected for exchange programs, for scholarships, for programs, for opportunities, for grants. We work on the digital aspect of it because everything is online. You can find those opportunities in the print now. So we train them on this aspect. So the goal of Be Digitalized is to make the person to be the one, to be yourself, to be the person you want to be. You can be a doctor, but have a strong background in digital platforms. And that's where we want people to go.
Excellent. Now, one, of course, big problem in Europe, and I imagine, in Africa as well, is this whole aspect of, fake news, but used by, say, political interests, like in the form of propaganda, and so on and so forth. How do you engage with that? Is there something you kind of make people aware of, and how do you work with that?
So propaganda is one of the big challenges. There is this stat that I read last year that really struck me, that said that every hour one person is exposed to one fake news. So in 24 hours you have been exposed to 12 fake news. That's a lot. 12 fake news, that's a lot. So what we do is that we have campaigns online most of the time, but we also have in-person discussions where we address some issues, where we check on how to fact check informations, where we check on what are the platforms you can relate to based on your country and based on the global scale, how you can, develop those reactions, those way of acting towards information, because the border between information and disinformation is very tiny. So we have to be careful on what we are posting, and sometimes we can be part of this propaganda without knowing. So it's not just accusing others. It's not just putting fingers to others and say, hey, they are the one doing it. No. Sometimes, thanks to your like, thanks to your comment, thanks to your shares, you're also part of the propaganda. You're also part of fake news. So we train them on both sides. There is the side of those who are sharing this bad news, so be careful. And there is also the side of, if you by any means you find yourself sharing it, you join them and you are making it grow, because from you, 5 or 10 people can be affected. So don't be part of the chain that will make it much more difficult for others to get out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have European elections coming up in Europe, in the European Union, and one of the big worries, of course, is that Russia is going to actively interfere in those elections. Partly because of the war in Ukraine, but also generally speaking because of the whole antagonism that is kind of there. So there's a big worry that Russia will flood European internet with fake news, promote, in this particular case, far-right interests, because they will lead to big divisions in society. And that's what, it's a divide and rule kind of principle. So the European Commission, essentially has given Facebook an ultimatum that said, you have to prove to us within a week how you're actually making sure that this doesn't happen, or you have to pay huge penalties, and in worst case we're going to switch you off. We're going to turn Facebook off across Europe. And of course, Facebook, is really scrambling, kind of trying to put safeguards in place. I don't quite know what the outcome of this process is. Presumably, Facebook is saying that they can manage it, that they can control it, but there are real issues here, aren't there? And so I wonder, like in Africa, and of course, like you wait until the presidential election in the US with Trump and all that. Of course, Russia is going to be absolutely in there, kind of trying to promote Donald Trump and all of that. So you can see how how that works. Now, there's far less regulation, there's far less oversight, and presumably also kind of less money, really, and less, whatever, less structure, less government to do something about that. Is that a problem you find? Because of course there's only so much consumers can do. I mean, you're absolutely right. We can obviously kind of try to ignore it, not like it, and all the rest. But at the end of the day, it'll always get some people. It's actually. I mean, it's not. So did you have a kind of a take on this? Is there any advocacy going on on Ivory Coast or in other kind of parts of Africa that is making aware of this problem, is kind of trying to put safeguards in place?
So I read a document like for the election that happened in 2020 in my country, where some people developed a platform where you can fact check information. But the tricky point is that when internet is not regulated by independent entities, it's difficult to monitor everything. You can face either a shutdown of the platforms, or you can face a boom of fake news into it. What we can do on our hands is to train people and make them informed that this is what is going to happen this time, and try to keep them alerted. That's what you can do, because you can't impose an idea or a way of doing things to people. They're free to do whatever they want to do, but it's sometimes with informations, when you show them the consequences of social information, on how this information affected the community, they understand that it's not just limited to online activities, but you show them the repercussion of this online activity on the day-to-day activity. I give an example in Africa. I think it was 2018 or 2019. There was an old video that was posted, and this old video was used as a starting point for a crisis in the country. Sometimes you go on and you see old videos that were done in 22, in 23, in 2010, but today people use it as they are getting to elections or to an important agenda in the country to rise hunger, to rise pain, to rise everything. And that's where we come up and we say, no, be careful. This video was posted so years ago. So that's what we can do to moderate, to adjust, and to work on your hands. But we can give, for example, Facebook is a business company. They have to make money. And those propaganda help them make money. They can tell the contrary of that. All social medias need that. But that's why it's important to work on human focus, on human-centric platform. If you work on values instead of working money, you have more access, more opportunities to limit the drawbacks of the platform. But if you're focusing on a money-centric approach, then it's quite a one-shot activity, and then everything collapses.
Yeah, I mean, there's two other aspects which I find quite interesting, possibly kind of like a difference between, say, most European countries and most African countries. One is that because internet is so easily accessible and relatively cheap in Europe and North America, that everybody, irrespective of their education, their income, their background, has access. So that means that in Europe, there is a much greater, there's a much greater population of relatively uneducated people using it, and they are quite easily also, sort of swayed or manipulated. Whereas if you're highly educated and, you're highly literate, or maybe, been to uni or whatever, then it's harder to fool you. So that's one aspect. So I'd imagine that, say, in a place like Ivory Coast, it requires, you'd probably be from a certain social class initially, or, of a certain income, because otherwise you wouldn't have the access to start with. So with that comes a certain basic level of education, I imagine. So my guess, and I don't know, this is just a guess, I don't know whether this is true, that the average user of internet in Ivory Coast would be more educated, better educated than the average user in Germany. I mean, that sounds really weird, but it's simply because of the kind of access requirements to get online, the kind of background you have to have in order to kind of have the money, the resources, and all the rest. So that's one aspect. I wonder whether you have a sort of a thought on that. And the other aspect, of course, is that in places like most parts of Europe, we are used that government takes care of us in so many respects. There's a social provision for everything. Not everything. It's not heaven, but people are far more used to be taken care of. They're not really so much used to having to take care of things themselves. And again, I think that is a fundamental difference, presumably, to most places in Africa, where nobody really cares, really, unless you care yourself. Can you have a sort of what's your thought on these 2 points? The kind of average demographic of an internet user in, say, Africa, Ivory Coast, and also this whole notion of having to take care of yourself to start with.
So funny enough, I will say that nowadays everybody's getting access to internet, and people limit access to internet to having access to social media. And that's why the propaganda is the most difficult one to be managed. Because when you go on WhatsApp, and now people are using Telegram, which is something that is booming now in Africa and in Ivory Coast. So propaganda use social media, mainly WhatsApp and Telegram, to be spread everywhere. So the button forward is the most used on WhatsApp today in terms of propaganda. Somebody getting news forward, to the point that sometimes WhatsApp has been now obliged to limit the number of forwards, but also specify that this message has been forwarded many times. But it doesn't limit it, because WhatsApp, it's personal in a way. It's personal. So the person can just copy and paste. Imagine that you get a fake news, and then you belong to a group of 200, 300, or 250 people. You just copy and paste it. It's not forwarded. So when it is posted there, you have touched 300 people. How can we manage that? On Facebook, you can block the link. You can block any keyword related to this. But on WhatsApp, there is no blocking somewhere. Once it is posted in the group, it is done. If you go to Telegram, where people can be joining 10,000 people, 20,000 people, imagine this fake news posted over there. It's great. It's difficult. And now people are not using text messages. They are using clips, 30-second clips, 1-minute clips, 2-minute clips. And this can be shared with anyone that has gone to school or not gone to school. And that's why it's very tricky. The second point, in Africa, government that they don't really take care of the people like you in Europe, having the privilege to be in Europe and seeing how things are done. In Africa, it's not the case. You have to do everything yourself. And that's why also propaganda is used. Because when you are being in pain, you have been suffering, you have been going through a lot of challenge, you have been going through a lot of humiliations. Now, for example, in Africa, in Ivory Coast, the rise of the price of electricity bill is on the score now. Everybody's talking about it here. It has risen. My own bill, double. Some people got their bill triple. So if this person gets a fake news or gets something that is not, right, but he will find a foundation that is the pain of the population and get to a place that we can manage. So today, there is two sides of the coin to manage. solving people issue and training them. Because the more people can be trained, but if they are in pain, they won't care about the training, they will care about surviving. And if everybody is in surviving mode, propaganda won't be managed easily. That's where government and politics focuses their strength to abuse the population.
Absolutely, and and of course that is very much true. I think the world over. I mean, it's actually there's a very kind of like a similar version of that, of course, in Germany as well. Anywhere, it's when people feel threatened in their existence, when they're in pain, they will obviously, yeah, they switch into sort of survival mode, and that's a different kind of behavior altogether. Very, very interesting. I mean, this is a kind of a conversation I think we really should kind of continue at some point. I'm very, very grateful for you to make time for me to talk about the digital sort of like development in Africa. And it's one of those aspects. I mean, it goes, as you said, it goes alongside sort of the cultural kind of development, the kind of economic development, the social development, the political development, and of course the digital aspect of it in a way kind of ties it all together. And so it's absolutely fundamental. I mean, there's a kind of a thing in sort of an economic theory that you kind of have to go through kind of industrialization to reach a post-industrial stage, the kind of post-industrial kind of society that say,
Yeah.
the UK or, parts of the US or Germany or whatever. But I wonder whether you can actually skip industrialization, whether you can go straight to post-industrial if you invest in kind of the digital economy. I think there's going to be interesting cases over the next 10 years in Africa where we will see exactly that, where the countries leapfrog. They don't actually industrialize; they're post-industrialized. They go straight from like a kind of an early industrial stage to a kind of a late industrial or post-industrial, and that's going to be so interesting to see. And obviously, I'm sure you're going to be very much part of that development. And I look forward to continuing our dialogue really at some point soon. Thank you very, very much for making time. Let's stay in touch and maybe continue that at some point in the future.
Sure. Thank you so much, Nicky. It was very great to have this session. I really enjoyed the conversations. I believe that it's going to be helpful for many others listening to this. And it was a great time.
One last thing, what what are your plans for the future? For be DigitWise and so on and so forth. Do you have any programs lined up? Is there anything that you would like to share with our listeners and viewers? In terms of future developments or forthcoming programs.
So my 3 programs that I have now for the future, and I'll be working on. So there is this tailor program that I launched that is called Be the One. Is a paid program, but it equips all the participants on how they can develop themselves in digital platforms. The second one project that I'm working on is actually develop partnerships with other organizations that we are doing either the same scope of activities, or we can partner on sharing or exchanging ideas, exchanging knowledges. And the third one is developing policies, working on fostering policies where we understand that digital literacy is not an option. And we understand that young people are also stakeholders. Because when we listen to people talking about stakeholders, they limit it to money. That's funny enough, because ideas or money without ideas is just money. You need ideas, and young people, they have ideas and they have money, but this money is just limited, so they can't expand the impact of the work. That's why in the beginning I mentioned about achievement. So I'm working on these 3 things, the program, the paid program, developing programs and exchange programs with partners, and then working on policies where digital literacy and young people empowerment is at the center.
That sounds like a really, really interesting way forward. I'm really looking forward to to see this develop. and I wish you really all the best of luck. And as I said, we stay in touch, and I'm sure there'll be opportunities along the way to continue that dialogue and to help each other in whatever way. So thank you very, very much for joining me today. Have a great time and all the best for your future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nico. You too. Have a good one.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.